Shut up and sit down.
Hey!
I think we start by understanding.
Hello and welcome to episode number 1. I'm Josh Mastel, your host and CEO of Uproar Partners. We work with small and mid-sized business owners and sales leaders, helping them build and execute modern sales strategies. Today, I'm talking with Chris Dale, who has been one of the biggest influences personally in my life, a mentor to me. He is the OG, old school sales leader. This guy taught me just about every single thing I know in terms of hiring, managing, promoting, working with, coaching, training, teaching salespeople. Chris is currently the president of Zachary Piper Solutions and Piper Companies. He's responsible for the overall sales strategy and growth of the entire company. So really, again, excited to have him here today. Let's get right at it. Cool. Hey, I was really excited to have you on the call, obviously, because we're such good friends. But, you were one of the first mentors for me. We worked together for almost 10 years in some regard. But you were really the person who taught me the most about how to manage a team and how to really build a successful, high-performing sales team. So having a mentor of mine on here is really cool. So I appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
But I remember back the first time you took a shot on me, this is 7-8 years ago, to put me into my first sales management job. I remember sitting in your office in Raleigh, and I was like, Chris, I was a good sales guy, but I don't know if I'm ready for this management role. And you encouraged me that I was, and I said, hey, if you could give me one piece of advice to manage a sales team, what would it be? And I remember you writing on the board, you wrote, it all comes down to these 3 basic principles: set crystal clear expectations, teach and train people how to hit those expectations, and hold them accountable. I've always remembered that ever since that day. So I'd love to hear you kind of share a little bit about, what is that philosophy you have? Where'd that come from? I think it'd be really powerful for people to hear that.
Sure. I appreciate it. And Josh, I'm just like you. I've been very fortunate to have really great mentors and sales leaders in my life that shared that with me. I wish I could take credit for making up that philosophy, but I certainly didn't. Early on in my sales career, and then when I transitioned from just being a salesperson and individual contributor to a leadership role, that was explained to me. And this concept is simple, and I think it surrounds the overall management concept. And you've worked with me long enough to see it, is to try to keep things as simple as possible, because what we do in our industry and in most sales industry, it's not that complicated. You have either your goods, your services, whatever you're trying to provide to your customers, and there's people out there who either need it or they don't. And in the world we live in today, there's so many choices to be had. It comes down to who do they trust and who do they like the most. And if we can keep things simple, we can have that competitive edge in the field. And so for me, leading a sales team, regardless of industry, regardless of the products or service that you're offering, it really comes down to making sure everyone knows exactly what level of play is expected. That's what set expectations mean. It's having grown up now and having children of my own, I can't get mad at my kids for drawing on the walls if I never told them that drawing on the walls is not a good thing to do. And so that's the set expectations of, here's the rules of play, here's what's acceptable, here's what success looks like, and here's what failure looks like. They've got to know that from the start. And once they know that, then it's your responsibility, again, just like being a parent, to teach them what they don't know and to help them understand how to achieve what good looks like. It's one thing to just tell someone that, hey, success is at this mark, or it's at this milestone, or it's at this commission level. And that's all well and good. And for the most part, if we're hiring motivated people, they already know that. They already know that success means X to them. It's a 6-figure salary. It's, it's a bonus. It's whatever it might be. But if they don't know how to execute on that plan, they're just lost. And they're going to run in circles. And the last thing of accountability, I think I wrote on the board, follow up, follow up, follow up.
Yep.
I was taught a long time ago that part of your job as a sales leader or sales manager is to be a professional reminder. Because again, going back to the fact that so your sales team should be intrinsically motivated. If you're hiring the right people, they want to be successful. They don't come to work just to show up and get a paycheck. They come to work to grow and to excel in their career. But if, like all of us, they could forget or they neglect to remember a task item or a follow-up action item, and it's your job to be that professional reminder to say, hey, call that contact, follow up with that client, whatever that might be, and ensure that they know what the expectation is, they know how to do it, and now you're holding them accountable to actually meeting those goals and then those commitments or whatever those are daily and weekly.
Love that. That's so awesome. I feel like I've made a pretty successful career out of managing salespeople by those 3 simple steps that, as you gave your mentor credit, I give you credit for that. So when you talk about the follow-up, I remember times when you have so many people reporting to you, in a lot of the shoes that you've been, you've had really large groups of people reporting to you. Our listeners on here are typically really busy, small, medium-sized business owners. They got a million things going on. What have you found to be successful in, if you're going to be a professional reminder, how do you stay organized to make sure you're on top of all that?
That's a great question. And, this is going to vary obviously for different people. As technology has changed, I've certainly leveraged that as best I can. I mean, nowadays, obviously, we can put voice memos on our phone and then set reminders to follow up with us. But I'm old fashioned. I have a stack of notebooks that I've gone throughout the years. I've got a fresh one here that I'm actually sitting here next to. And it is my daily guide, if you will. It's a fresh, clean page every single day. Any action items from the previous day that didn't get accomplished go on today's, starting list, and they start at the bottom. But that to me, and this is just my personal opinion on it, whatever I write down gets done. If I don't write it down, it's not going to get done. For example, if I asked you, Josh, if you're reporting to me, follow up with, customer ABC, by next Tuesday, I'm writing myself that same note as if I'm assigning it to myself and saying, now my note is follow up with Josh about him following up with client ABC next Tuesday. And that becomes a task item for me. And that's what drives my day. So I try my best to be proactive in outlining my day so that I've got my tasks, my follow-ups with my sales teams. And then as a sales manager, you're wearing 15 hats. You're wearing professional reminder hat, but then you're fighting fires and you're being reactive. And I think too many times we get caught up being reactive, and that's when those tasks fall to the wayside. So whatever system works for individuals, whether it's old fashioned like myself doing handwritten, whether it's your task list in Outlook, there's so much technology out there you can leverage. There's really no excuse for not having a running list of things that you're trying to do and accomplish in that given day. And there's only so many hours in the day, so some things roll. That's fine. They just roll to the next day, but they don't get forgotten.
Yep. Love that. So you mentioned earlier that in the market today, it's like so competitive. Every company's competing against 1,000 other people in the market that do the same thing that they do. And you mentioned that the buyer today is going to go with who they trust and who they like the most. What have you found are ways that companies can be training their people or setting good expectations for their people and following up with their people on how likable they are and how trustworthy they are?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's no perfect answer. If I had the perfect solution, we'd all be billionaires, right? But I think part of it really takes a step prior to that, Josh. It's really the hiring process at the beginning. I mean, to a certain degree, we all know the old adage, a zebra doesn't change its stripes. And it can be challenging to try to change someone's likability or trying to give someone charisma. Some of that can come with maturity and professionalism and time in the seat. But a lot of that is just what they're born with and how they were raised and just can they carry on a conversation? Can they tell a good story? Are they good listeners? Are they just flat out enjoyable to spend 15 minutes with? And there's some of those things that, can be molded, but it's difficult to really train and enhance. So I think first it starts with the interview process and making sure, and you've heard me say this before plenty of times, but in an interview, I'm looking for really two key features for a salesperson, their personality and their presence. I believe it's our responsibility as sales managers to teach them how to make cold calls the way we want to make them, or how to make customer presentations the way we want them done. Those can be taught. Those are skills that can be developed. But I can't make someone be more personable or have a better personality. Now, I can fine tune it as time goes on by just simply what I would consider to be professional development, which can be anything as simple as having them, read certain books, right? I mean, I think the holy grail for sales has always been how to win friends and influence people. I think if you're a salesperson and you hadn't read that book, I mean, you're just doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
Some of the character traits from that book are just so basic and now ingrained in all of us that they just become the way. So while it's difficult to completely shift or change a personality, it can be molded, right? If I've got someone who's got a baseline, basic personality presence, they're pleasant to be around, then I can teach them through professional development, whether it's through reading, whether it's through mentoring, whether it's through role playing. I think role playing is a critical piece that might not be utilized as much as we need it to be, because the fact is it's hard. It can be a little bit awkward. It can be a little bit embarrassing, and it's easy to think, we're kind of above that. That seems kind of elementary. But the truth is, just like we're sitting here talking now, you don't know what it sounds like until you listen to it on the back end, and you may think you come across one way, but your audience hears it a different way. And you can only know that by role playing and giving for that person honest, direct feedback that's respectful. And it's always in the vein of helping them. It's not to critique them and to knock them down or to cut them personally. It's saying, hey, just FYI, when you walk into a room, you're not making eye contact like you need to. And they may just not be aware of it. It's not that they're rude individuals. They're just unaware of what their body language does when they walk into a meeting, or something as simple as teaching them, hey, treat everyone at your client site and everyone along the way to your client site as if they're your customer. From the person who answers the phone, who the front desk receptionist, he or she should be treated as if they're the CEO. And if you do that with everyone, that becomes a habit. And you are just now a naturally more likable person than the person who, there's nothing worse than we've all done this or had this done to us, where we're not treated like a customer until we give those signs of buying, and then we're treated like gold. Yeah. And then we immediately get resentful, right? Because we're like, wait a minute, before a second, if you didn't think I was going to spend any money with you today, you weren't going to give me the time of day. And now that you are, like, it's fake. So I think You can help teach people to be genuine. Part of that is in yourself being genuine, being vulnerable. I think if you set the example as a sales manager that you're humble, you're always learning yourself, you're showing that, you've got coaches and you've got mentors. I think that sets the tone for the team that they can be vulnerable and lead and help shape that likability factor, if you will.
Yep. You brought up that point about treating everybody you run into with respect, like they're a customer, even if they aren't a customer yet. And it actually brings up an interesting point around what's going on in a lot of the schools today with bullying and that kind of thing. I know you have 2 awesome kids. Do you think that trait is something that someone's either born with and has because of their parenting, how they were raised? Or do you think we could hire a salesperson that doesn't necessarily have that trait and we could teach that to them at an older age?
I think it definitely can be taught. I think like anything, if you put enough effort into something, I'd have to give the caveat of this. If a person is intrinsically motivated, and obviously I mean they are just naturally driven to be successful, and whatever definition that means for them, because not everybody's motivated by the same things, whether it's money, whether it's prestige, whether it's, mission, it doesn't matter what it is. If they have that motivation to change, then I think they can be taught. But that's the key factor. Like they've got to want to change, just like anything else. Like if you want to lose weight and you want to, get in better shape, naturally there's trainers out there that'll help you do it. But if there could be the best trainer in the world, but if you don't step foot in the gym, you're not going to make any improvement.
Yeah. Now I made some hiring mistakes in my day of believing in some people that seemed like they really had it. I think if I look back at mistakes I made in hiring, it's that I believed in people too much because I liked them. I think they had a good presence and they were likable in the meeting, but they lacked that self-motivation. And I think it's because I've always relied on my ability to be the cheerleader and pump people up and drive them. But a big lesson I learned over the years was you need to hire people that are already motivated. You can't motivate somebody.
That's right.
So what's your take on that? Like, how do you, in an interview, in a brief meeting with someone before you hire them, the proof's in the pudding, how do you find out if someone's motivated or not?
Yeah, that's an awesome question because it's one of probably the hardest things I think to identify. In that same vein of like, how do you figure out if they've got a great work ethic? That's hard to prove until they actually do it. But I think some of the techniques that I found that have been more successful than others are things like asking them, even down to the simplest levels, like, hey, when you were in high school and you had your summer breaks, what did you do? Open-ended question. Figure out. And that's going to tell you a lot. And this is where you have to be really gray in the sales management world because you can hire somebody who has had to really roll up their sleeves and help contribute to the family dollar because, they didn't come from a lot. And that obviously gives them an intrinsic motivation. But I found extremely successful people that had, very wealthy parents too. And they're self-motivated because they want to go out and accomplish the same things their parents accomplished. So there's no two like perfect demographics to pull from. But I think you'll learn a lot about, hey, when I was in high school, on summer breaks, I worked. I don't care if they made $10 a day. Like it has nothing to do with what the dollar was. It's the fact that they could have, sat at home, play video games, just hung out with friends, but they made a conscious choice. Sometimes their parents nudged them to go out and do anything, have a paper route, go wait tables, bus tables, whatever it might have been. And same question while in college. What did you do if you weren't in class? Asking them about challenges they faced and challenges that they've overcome and really getting deep with that, beyond, I had a really tough paper, my senior seminar and I had to spend a lot of time in the library. Like, that's okay. But I'm talking like, tell me about a time in your life where like you really got kicked and knocked down and you had to, do something to overcome it. And what was that event like? How did it shape or change you? A question you've heard me ask 100 times in the interview process is just simply, what are you motivated by? Period.
Yep.
And listening to that answer. And I think sometimes you get the stock answer, success or this, that, or the other. I personally am a big fan of the good old fashioned, them being honest and saying money and being shy about it. You know what I mean? Like, no one comes to work for free. And especially in sales roles where you are paid commensurate to their success, money is majority of the time the leading factor. And I love a good salesperson to just come out and tell me, hey, I'm driven by money because I know that person is somebody that I can take and mold. And if I show them the path, they will go get it.
Totally. I totally agree with that. And I'm curious about a lot of people I run into are in a situation where they've made the mistake. They've hired the wrong person already. Mm-hmm. And by the time that I get to them within their business to talk about, all right, what do we do now? How do we untangle the wires? And how do we get things on the right path? Most people we talk to are really frustrated with salespeople. I know the natural answer is, I'm about to ask you, what do you do with those people when you know you made a mistake? The natural answer is cut them, obviously. Mm-hmm. But my question to you is, when do you know that you've spent enough time in developing someone? When is it the salesperson who's struggling's fault, and when is it that they haven't been given enough management or time to develop?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think really that's a look in the mirror conversation that every sales manager has to have. And I go back to kind of the initial discussion today, which is, can I ask myself, first of all, have I made a clear cut definition and expectation list for this person? Can they tell me right now, if I sit in the room and say, what are your top 3 responsibilities in your role? Can they tell me what those are? And they're exactly aligned with what they should be. That's number one. And then, I ask myself again, have I taught this person how to execute on the game plan we've agreed upon? Have I sat with them and role played scenarios or coached them on whatever the activity might be, cold calling, client presentations, closing techniques, whatever the skill set might call for? Have I put in the personal time to teach this person how to be successful? And last, again, have I followed up? Have I met with this person daily, weekly, if needed, to make sure that their activities are at the right targets, that the conversations they're having with those targets are the right conversations? And if all those boxes are being checked, yes, and I can look in the mirror and say, I have done this, and I don't even think it's about a length of time. I think we can make a mistake and say it's just, I'm going to give them 6 weeks and they're up or out. Well, what does that mean? Again, am I going to actually walk shoulder to shoulder with them for 6 weeks and put the effort in of myself? And then maybe 6 weeks is enough, or maybe 6 days is enough. Who knows? But when I can look in the mirror and answer all those questions that, hey, I've done everything in my power to either get them the right mentor, be the mentor for them, give them the coaching and teaching, the guidance, and the follow-up and accountability. If all those things are done and they're still not meeting expectations, it probably comes down to desire or some sort of trait that cannot be changed, and it's time to part ways.
That's totally great. And I know from personal experience, I know you definitely do, is a lot of times you're scared to have that conversation with that struggling salesperson, like really scared, because you probably like them and they're trying and you think that they're going to blow up. And usually that conversation is like, they're feeling the same thing you are. They usually know it's not a fit either, and you walk as friends.
Yeah, that's 100% right. In almost every single one of those instances, people are relieved. And frankly, too, if they are the right person and they're just maybe not creating the right habits, or they need some extra teaching, more often than not, they're thankful that you cared enough to say, hey, the direction you're heading right now isn't getting the results that you want or I want. But I believe in you. I care about you as a professional, as a friend. So let's work together to fix that. And I'm committing to you that I'm going to do my part to help you get there. And for the right employee, they're going to go, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, please. I don't like my paycheck right now. I'd love it if it was double. How the hell do I get there?
100%. You mentioned this earlier. You're an old school guy. I'm like you. I'm old school in that I've noticed over the last 3 to 5 years a theme in teams and management in just the business world, as I've gotten more used to talking to more people, that I feel like the world has gotten a bit soft in terms of old school accountability, having direct conversations, telling it like it is, giving people direct feedback. Have you seen the same thing? If so, how do you see that hurting an organization or a team?
I absolutely seen the same thing. I've had the privilege now to work for 3 large companies and 3 very different companies, and there's some consistent trends. And I wish I could know the answer why. I have some ideas as to why. It may just be a generational thing, and I don't think it's just about the age of the employees. I think it's just the kind of the time and the worlds that we live in. Sometimes we're so almost spoiled by the technologies and the advances in every part of our lives that we tend to lean that into our work lives too. And good old fashioned roll up your sleeves hard work doesn't become attractive anymore because we don't have to work for so many other things. We have 500 channels at our fingertips. We have a whole shelf encyclopedia with one click of a button, right? So I think that's just kind of been the trend. And I see it especially in sales teams where the ability, or I guess really the desire to just flat out want to work harder than your competition has gone by the way. I think a fatal mistake too many sales teams make is trying to find that one easy or easier path to get rich quick kind of thing. Or if I make this one call, unload this entire book of business. If I do this one activity, it's going to do this. And you've heard me vent before. One of my bigger pet peeves in a sales organization is a team that does paralysis by analysis. We spend days and hours and weeks strategizing around territories and key account plans, and let's study up on the product lines of every account that we might call on one day, and to a certain degree, you just got to freaking pick up the phone and make a phone call.
Yeah,
you can only do so much homework before you just got to freaking do it.
I get frustrated sometimes on that point of, I think the number one question I get from younger people that reach out to me is like, Josh, hey, is there any books you recommend for, I want to be a great salesperson, or motivational books? And granted, I am a big fan of self-improvement and reading books, but I want to reply to these people like, just go do it. Like, quit reading about it and go do it. So I think it's the same exact thing. So I want to change tunes a little bit. So when we go, and the way our philosophy at Uproar is, when I go look at a company or a team, I really look at it in 3 ways. Like, I can go into a team and analyze it by looking at three core things. I kind of want to hear your thoughts out of these. I look at the people as number one. So you got to have the right people in any team. So any sports team, you have to have the right athletes on the field in the right positions. Secondly, you need to have the right process. So they need to be following the right sales process for how you're attacking your customers. And then thirdly, you got to have the right culture. So if all three of those things are working together, the team's going to win. So I know you've been a part of a lot of, teams that have had ups and downs. You've been a part of a lot of really great organizations and teams that, have dipped a bit, and teams that were not as good that grew. With that people, process, and culture kind of thought, what are some themes you've seen of why great teams fail or why average teams do really, really well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if I were to add to your bucket of three, I think you're kind of covering it with the people, but I would put maybe an exclamation point or asterisk right there and say the right people, but also the right coach, the right leader. I think that'd be the one pillar there, because to your point where I have seen branches, offices, groups of sales teams succeed or fail, it has almost always come back to the right or the wrong leader in that seat. And you're an example of that. When I tapped you on the shoulder to move your life out to San Diego to make some significant changes, it changed everything. And if you remember, we did change a few of the people, but we didn't change all the people. We had a lot of the right people. We just had maybe the wrong leader in that seat, and injecting you into that made a big difference. And you've seen it, in promotions that you've had underneath you, the wrong promotion to a leadership role can make or kill a team. And so I think people, culture, that's key. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think it really does. I think it's come down to that leader, because you hear a lot of times there's no bad teams, there's just bad leaders. Some great books out there about the Navy SEALs who they'll take one boat leader and move them around to 6 different boat teams during training, and that leader's teams win every time, regardless of what team members that they're put underneath that person, they win regardless.
Totally. So we have a lot of listeners that are business owners, so they are the leader, but they're trying to grow a sales team or trying to get one started, and they're wearing 10 hats, but then they're also trying to be the leader of the sales team. And usually it's not working because that's not chemically in their makeup of what they're good at. They're entrepreneurs. They build businesses. They're visionaries. They're not in the weeds managing the team. Like, what advice would you have for a business owner? What should they be looking for in a leader? What do you see are the best characteristics of a great leader for a sales team?
Yeah. So to me, a couple things. I mean, if at all possible, I want to find someone who's got a proven track record, who's done that multiple times, who's led people to success. But I also, and again, you're included in this list. I hired and trained plenty of people who don't necessarily have a proven track record, but have the X factors and have the qualities that I'm looking for. And some of those qualities are things like, again, now it's a high level of personality and presence, right? That's what I look for in my sales force. That's also what I'm going to look for in my sales leader. My sales leader needs to be someone that if I'm sitting across from them, they will literally change my energy to the positive way, because they're just so motivating, captivating, charismatic. They are the person who can light up the room, who brings people up around them. They literally walk into the room with a smile, and yet they still have the savviness and the swagger to get serious when the time is called to get serious. But when I look at who's my perfect leader, it's that person who's charismatic. People are drawn to them. People are loyal to them because this leader has their team's best interest at heart. The leader is there for the team, not just there for themselves. They're not there just to get their quarterly bonus. They're there because they want everyone on their team to be successful and make a lot of money and be productive, knowing that, of course, that will ultimately, reward them as well. But that intrinsic motivation, and to your point again, it's not your job to motivate people. So I've maybe changed the verbiage to I want inspiring leaders. Because inspiring leaders, they're going to take your already motivated team and inspire them to be great, inspire them to get out of it. So that's what
Love that. Love that. Does that leader need to be the best salesperson, you think?
Absolutely not. You look at any quality coach in the NFL or in any major sport, rarely were they the top athlete in their field. Usually they came from that field. Usually they played the game because they got to know the game, but very rarely were they the quote unquote best player on the field.
Yeah. I remember, speaking of the inspiration part, I remember, you probably remember the story because I think you got in some trouble with Chelsea, your wife. You threw a goal out to us, a big team that you had, that we had to hit I forget what it was, some big quarterly goal or monthly goal. And you said if we hit it, you would shave your head in front of the whole company at some conference or something like that. And I remember we hit it, you did have to shave your head. So that was always a good story of inspiration. Did you get in trouble for that?
She wasn't very impressed. Yeah. One, I didn't tell her that I threw it out there as a goal. And two, when you guys achieved the goal, I didn't tell her that it was happening. So it wasn't until that night after I got home from sales conference that I was greeted at the door with a very not impressed face.
Well, you have a head of hair and face for radio and for audio like this. That's why we're not doing a news station broadcast. All right, cool. Well, I want to end on a little bit of a personal note. I think it's a good inspiration for a lot of people. It definitely was for me. Without going into the details, you've had a tough last year and a half with some health issues that were kind of a scare for you, and you're on the up and up right now. You beat them, and you probably have a whole different perspective on business, life, motivation, a lot of different things. I would love to hear just a couple of things from you about maybe a different outlook you have right now, or some advice for some people out there that are going through some really hard times, whether it's physically or financially or anything. Coming out in the end, what's that kind of experience been like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Josh, you know the story, but obviously for the audience's sake, for those who don't know, I was diagnosed with congestive heart failure in October of 2016. Came completely out of nowhere. Hit me like a ton of bricks. No family history of that, no personal history of that. And doctors still to this day really don't quite understand why. And I went through a lot of trials and tribulations, had a lot of complications, health-wise because of that diagnosis. At one point, I was on the heart transplant list. And thank God I've been fortunate enough to, recover from that. And I'm still not completely out of the woods. I still have to follow a pretty regimented schedule in terms of health and exercise and, medications. But because of I'm a person of faith, so I believe that I got through it because of that, as well as some of the best care in the world at Duke and Durham. And I tell you, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, as crazy as it sounds, as much of a journey as that was to go through, not that I love that it happened. I'm grateful that it happened in a way, because a lot of takeaways came from it. One of which is the obvious, is the immediate brakes being pumped and life being slowed down from, a 100-mile-an-hour guy and working in an industry that's 100 miles an hour. And immediately the brakes gets put on and it's like, whoa, you got all of a sudden you're faced with a real big reality, and whatever challenges or stressors you might have thought you had yesterday at work just got completely real. But two big things for me that I learned, I think. One is the power of the mind. And in this, I take with me still in terms of just whatever my personal goals are, my business goals are, the power of your mind to literally and chemically change your body. And specifically, not to get wishy-washy on like what we think is going to happen and kind of fall in the book The Secret. But to a degree, there's truth in the sense that if we think we're going to lose, if we think we're going to get sick or we're going to get hurt, or we think the negative is going to happen, body releases chemicals to protect us in that fight or flight mode, and we literally break our body down. And that's what causes things like depression and weight gain and all kinds of stressful disorders and addictions and all kinds of challenges. Versus when we find pleasure in life, we're grateful for life, and we think positively, we can literally change the chemical makeup, because our brains send different hormones to our bodies. And a lot of the times where my doctors would tell me, like, this is going to be the outcome and you're going to have this, I would literally tell them, no, I'm not. I'm going to heal, going to get better. My body is going to heal. And I would want to release that positive dopamine to my body. And dopamine actually acts as a healing chemical part of it. And, again, I don't think what I experienced was some wacky miracle. I think it was, again, great care, great doctors, frankly, a lot of good luck and being blessed, but also, my mindset was I was going to get better. I was not going to die. I was not going to have a heart transplant. I was going to get through this with friends and family supporting me. And that leads me to kind of my second point, which was, as a leader, one big professional takeaway. When I was first in the hospital, I don't even know if you know the story. I was first, in the hospital for a couple of weeks, and the company I was with at the time had employees, nationwide, and they were gracious enough to write me handwritten letters. And it was some were, short and sweet. Hey, thinking about you, get well soon. Some were a little bit longer. And one in particular from a young lady who had worked for me at the time for about 6 years. She wrote me a wonderful, heartfelt note just about how she was feeling and wishing me the best. And, she was thinking about me and praying about me and letting me know that, I'd been such an impact in her life. And she just really appreciative to have known me. And she had attached in there a copy of an email that I had written to her boss 6 years prior at the time, because her and I had done a role play together. And I thought she did a really good job. So I emailed her manager at that time saying, hey, this girl just did a kick-ass job in our role play. Please keep an eye out for her. Please give her some extra time and attention. She's going to be a rock star for us one day. Definitely, let's make sure we're giving her the right attention. And her manager kind of forwarded it to her and just said, hey, this is what, the vice president thought of you. You did a really good job. And she said in her note, she said, just so you know, I kept that email that you sent, not to me, but about me, in my inbox for all these years. And I've had on 3 different occasions thoughts about quitting, thoughts that I wasn't right for this business. I've hit walls, I've had struggles. And every time I go back to that email and I read those words that you wrote, and it re-inspires me to, that, hey, I am good at this job. I can kick ass in this business, and I'm reinvigorated. And you could have knocked me over with a feather. I'll get choked up talking about it, because to be very frank, I had forgotten that I even wrote that email. It was 6 years prior. And to be honest, I write a ton of emails like that. I do role plays all the time. So that transaction that we had was something for me that was kind of an everyday occurrence. But for her, it potentially changed the trajectory of her career. And it really hit home with me on 2 fronts. One, holy crap, we got a lot of responsibility as leaders, because what to us is an everyday activity. You role play, you give someone feedback, boom, next. But and to us, that's like, just like, getting your car and driving to work. But to the person that we're helping, we are either making or breaking their day and potentially like their career. And it's not to self-praise and say I made her career, because I certainly didn't. She earned everything she got. But the fact that I had even 1 little % of influence in that in a positive way really made me feel good, number one. And also reminded me like, oh my gosh, because the first thing I also thought about was, wow, how many times have I not done that? Have I not given someone encouragement? And maybe that's led them to exit their career or end a career before they should have. So it really gave me a perspective of like how much responsibility we have as leaders that we might take for granted, that for us, it's a little compliment that we didn't give or we did give that changes somebody's day, changes somebody's month or year, and how much responsibility we have to really be mindful of that. And I try to now make that a part of my daily routine, that if I see something someone does is positive, let them know, right? It's easy to find a delta. It's easy to find something to criticize, but it's challenging to tell somebody a simple, hey, great job on that. Again, to us, it costs nothing. It doesn't take 10 seconds, but it could change, their whole outlook. So that was a big takeaway, crazy situation.
Wow. That's really awesome, man. I appreciate that story. You were definitely a big influence to a lot of us that watched you fight through that and take such good takeaways out of that and positivity out of that. So let's close on this one question. The sales world's competitive. It's hard. It's a grind. Waking up, getting your ass kicked some days, hung up on. It could be, the lows could be low, the highs could be high, as we all know. What is one piece of advice, everything you've learned in your career and your personal life of struggles? Let's take a struggling salesperson out there. They want to be in sales. They're motivated to make money. They're good at it, but they're just having the worst month, the worst quarter ever. What's the one tangible piece of advice you can give us, someone in their slump, to get out of it?
That's a good question. All right. So someone in their slump, hitting the skids, not having the best time, quarter, day, whatever. If I look back to a particular time in my life where I certainly fell in that category, big thing that got me out of that was taking a step back and really analyzing, am I really working as hard as I think I'm working? Am I calling the right people? Am I having the right activities? Am I lying to myself and thinking that I'm having the right activities and the only person fooling is myself? And then taking that step to say, all right, enough. I'm not going to put up with my own bullshit anymore. I'm not going to lie to myself anymore. I know what I need to do to be successful, whether that's a certain list of customers I need to call on, a certain level of activity I need to have. And at the end of the day, I shouldn't have, my sales manager should be the least of my concerns. I'm going to hold myself accountable to having really quality activity, to having high expectations for how I'm going to play my game and how I'm going to carry myself through my day. And I'm going to reach whatever goals in front of me. Taking that step back, take a restock and figure it out.
I love that. Just giving a little bit more. I love that. So I read an interesting stat the other day that if you wake up 1 hour early, just 1 hour earlier than you usually do, which any of us could do, for an entire year, do you know how much time you gain back during that year?
How much?
15 days.
Wow.
If I wake up 1 hour earlier than everybody else, I got 15 days of my year over you. So Chris, thank you so much. This is awesome, man. You obviously business mentor to me, but also a life mentor, life friend. Love you to death. Thanks so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right, so just to recap some of the highlights of that awesome conversation with Chris, 3 things to remember. Number 1, hiring salespeople is super, super important. Don't forget when you're in that interview, a couple of the most important pieces to be looking for: personality and presence. Someone going to be successful in sales has to be able to connect with other people. They have to have that presence of confidence in order to connect with those people, to build relationship and to build trust. Number 2, remember, when you're hiring a sales leader or a manager, one of the most important pieces of your operation for you to hire for, you need to look at someone that can energize the room and inspire people. They don't need to motivate. They need to be able to inspire. Number 3, if you're having salespeople that are underperforming or an entire team that is underperforming, before you go throw all your salespeople out the window, take a peek under the hood of your manager. Most failing sales teams have a failing sales manager. All right, I hope you captured some good stuff today. I'd love to hear from you. Any comments that you may have, feel free to shoot us an email at letshunt@uproarpartners.com. That's LETSHUNT@uproarpartners.com. Also, make sure to subscribe to this so you don't miss our next conversation, next discussion around some stories in sales leadership with some big dogs in the industry. Have a good day.